Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another season of Dynamic Character Productions. We are here talking Como Bluffs, and it's Sunday. That means it's time for After the Snuff. I'm your host, John Millsip, and this week I am joined by someone I have been really excited to talk to, but really hated the fact I have to talk to him so early in the season. I am joined by David, our first boot from
Hey.
Como Bluff, and the hosts of Como Bluff, McKenna and Alex. Good morning, everyone. Hello, everyone. I don't know what time you're watching this, but we are here to get through an exciting first episode that has us meeting 10 new castaways, four returning castaways, and a ridiculous amount of dinosaur puns from our hosts.
But John, before we get started, David, I am just sad that you are not on a boat. You're not like somewhere out. You're just in your room, and I was waiting for us to get this
You,
interview done on a boat.
sometimes the adventure is staying in.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, true,
for
true.
sure.
Just like a
For sure.
mini, you stay indoors for it.
Okay.
Honestly, I was hoping to do this on a zip line. That was my initial plan. I
Oh,
had a I had it all planned out. I was gonna get my laptop, get one of those weird strap things
get
Oh,
the
that
like the
perfect.
professional video
GoPros
gamers
out.
yeah, and just be like, anyway, this is my life. I'm having such a great time being the first one voted out. Like, no big
I
deal.
did. I look. One day our Ponderosa budget will be good enough that you can do that.
Yeah,
I
If I
one
could get a
day.
rap video, that's my ultimate dream.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Well, let's get started here. David, remind everyone what was your experience with orgs coming into this game?
So my experience with orgs, well, for one of them, I did sign an NDA, so I can't talk too much about it. But I have, let's see, I don't know. Casey from Prometheus, want to shout out that team. I'm on the third season that's still yet to come out. But other than that, I have done some Discord orgs. I did one other org on Zoom called Eradication, which is more challenge based, which I also got voted out of first because not because of anything that I did per se. It was just like one of those orgs where like it was super challenge based, and you had to beat a challenge in order to progress to the next round,
Hmm.
Yeah.
which is not something that I'm super great at, as you can see. And so. And then other orgs like Discord orgs, there's only two. I did really well in one, and then the other one I kind of lost interest in
Mm.
because like
That's
life
fair.
gets busy. I had just come off of one Discord org, and then I was going into my second one, and I had already just like I was just like emotionally exhausted from everything from the
Yeah.
previous one, and so then I got voted out like fourth, I think, was
Mhm.
like even with like the couple of messages of haze that I sent out to people, I was still able to like make it like a couple of free merge boots in. So but yeah, so that's kind of my experience. And then I have like applied for Survivor, applied for Big Brother,
Mhm.
talked to actually I've had help with Adam Klein from Survivor 33, like had him
Yeah.
review some of my videos and stuff like that.
Mm,
So yeah,
nice.
still been on that Survivor grind and stuff like that as well.
Well, my recommendation is that for your next video, just do it on a zip line.
Yeah,
Yeah, just do
exactly.
it
Yeah,
on
of
the
course.
zip line.
I'll go. Let's see. I have a free excursion in Cabo. I should just yeah. I'll do
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, like with all that experience you have coming in, how did it feel when the day started for Como Bluff? Like you're sitting there, you see there are only 10 people. Did you think that was all we were having for a mini? Were you surprised when we all of a sudden had four returning players show up?
I mean, like I don't come into any like situation thinking like, oh, I got this all figured out, right? Like for me, like I think the night before I practiced like a couple challenge, like I practiced like a dice challenge that was had where like you stack dice and like move papers and stuff like that. But other than that, like I kind of live my life knowing that I can't really control everything. And so my but like I did when I did see that there was like so less of people and see that the tribes were so small, I was thinking to myself, oh, this feels a little bit like Rob Cesternino in like Survivor All Stars. I have like nowhere to hide. And so I was kind of a little bit bummed about that. When I saw returning players, I was like, okay, well now there's two more people that like probably aren't going to get voted out first because that's typically what happens with returning players. They unless they're like really terrible and like have no idea how to play the game, or like freaking like Johnny Fairplay and just like don't want to be there, they're gonna probably stick around for a little bit. So I was like, all right, there's less places to hide. But I went in just like thinking to myself, like, look, like you don't know what's gonna happen. Go in with a positive attitude, see what you can do. And unfortunately, like it just didn't work out for me this time. So
Well, let's talk about the theme here a little bit. McKenna, Alex,
Yeah.
we obviously have this dinosaur theme brought out for this mini here, and you kind of capitulate on it and get this idea of bringing back fossils, as you call them, and four returning players. So just give us an idea of what went into the thought process for coming up with this theme this season and how you decided upon bringing back four returning players.
Yeah, so I'll let McKenna speak mostly on this just because I think last season was very much my brainchild with Moneta Bank and the hijinks of just the advantages out the fucking wazoo. Sorry, McKenna.
Fine.
But
The after show, we're good.
but like we like sat down one night and we were like, well, what do we want? What do we want? And like I know I can speak for myself where there's a lot of players that their time in the game runs a lot shorter than we would have liked. Like in an
David.
ideal world, yeah, David is also on that list. Like I'm not just saying that because you're in front of me. It's true. I like your energy. I thought you could have gone very far in this game if things run a different way. But there's a lot of people that I'm like, it would be cool if we could give them a second chance without it being just a full second chance season.
Mhm. So I had been wanting to do dinosaurs since Trinity Falls. And I'm like, how do I make this not a child's birthday party? So I
Yes.
I was like, all right, we'll do this. Maybe we'll bring back some people because there's always been people we've talked about of they should come back. And then after Emily gets rocked out of Minetta, I'm like, all right, maybe there's something we can do here. And with Austin's like elevated graphics to make it not look like a child's birthday party, it really kind of enhanced the theme and we could do all these puns and it's like I don't know. I just like had a dream of dinosaurs being the theme and we needed to find a better way to elevate it. And so like
Yeah.
talking with Alex and Austin, we kind of formed Como Bluff and what it is for you to see.
Right. And also specifically with the four people we picked, it's like there was a lot of purpose behind who we were trying to bring in. It wasn't just like just anyone that we liked. It was just we do like everyone that we put onto these games, but it's whose story felt like it was done short. And it's like you have Emily was the big catalyst of that, where once McKenna brought that pitch to me again of dinosaur theme, I was like, you know what? I see it. But you have Emily who gets rocked out in her game. You have Meredith who gets tribe screwed by her own ally in Iriki. You have Margret who's like finally like slowly grasping the game fully in her first time playing, but gets cut right before she could really do anything about it. And then Erin, who's just sort of like I felt was like a fun, rootable underdog, like little comp piece that like got cut earlier than as someone who had her on her draft team. Too short.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and we reached out to some other people, like, Lowe is a big one who she had to leave because her dog had to go to doggy daycare. So like there were some other people on our mind too. And then we got down to these four and I'm like, this is the right four. I
Mhm.
like this is gonna provide such an interesting dynamic because they are so different from each other.
Dynamic.
Yeah, dynamic. Well,
Wow.
they're
Crazy.
such dynamic characters.
So, David, as you are sitting there at the marooning, you see the entire cast. Was there anyone that you had a first impression that you were kind of gravitated to that you were hoping before the tribes were announced was going to end up being on your tribe?
honestly, no. And maybe that was like maybe my first like sign that maybe I was like a bit in trouble. When because like again, like I can't really control anything, so I wasn't really looking at like the entire tribe dynamics. It was really when I got into the tribe where I was like hoping to see if I could find like a perfect match, if you will. Like I really do believe in the idea of like finding the one person that you really trust and like really like using yourselves as like a voting block to get yourself further in the game. And I just couldn't find that. Like I couldn't find that before the challenge, and I definitely couldn't find that after the challenge. And so it was kind of like a lot of like just throw yourself out there, see if something sticks. I was talking to Connor a bit. We had like a lot of connections through our talks about like neurodiversity. I was talking to I don't know, like I think looking back, it's kind of funny seeing that Meredith was like, yeah, man, like David, he seemed like a really awesome guy, and he seemed like somebody that I could have worked with. And it's like, Meredith, I would have loved to know that beforehand because that definitely would have voted for you. That's fine, But it is how it is. Like I didn't feel like an instant vibe like check on anybody, and anybody that did feel an instant vibe check with me just didn't talk to me about it. So it was kind of
Mm.
tough.
And it is one of those awkward things when it comes to a mini, right? Like there's so
Yeah.
sometimes that doesn't translate because we have like this hour-long episode
Yeah.
showing everything that's going on, but it's literally almost everything that's going on because I'm pretty sure that first scramble period was only about 20 minutes long. And that's
Oh yeah.
after being
Something like
thrown
that.
into a challenge and having to, you know, do a challenge that you didn't do particularly well in. And then there's this like stigma attached to scrambling in the first round because it's like, okay, but if I'm the person who goes skiing, if everyone's just going to talk about me, but people are also getting pulled for confessionals, and is that who you end up talking to? And we'll get to that. Don't worry, we will get to that point. But
Right.
it's just really hard to get that grasp in the game, and we see people talk about it so many times where it's like the first vote's the hardest because you have no idea what you're
Yeah, I
basing the vote on. It's just like this is the name, let's do it. And sometimes, it gets even more wild than that, and we'll talk about that eventually as well. But we start with our marooning, and McKenna and Alex split our tribes up. We have the Tarchia tribe, consisting of Ava, JB, Joseph, Beth, Richard, Emily, and Margret. And the
my boy
Ardonix
Richard.
tribe, yeah, exactly, your boy Richard. And then the Ardonix tribe, Connor, David, Logan, Brian, Julia, Meredith, and Erin. McKenna, what went into deciding these starting tribes? How did you divide these tribes up?
Well, we started with the returnees. We didn't want too many players on the same side, and uh Moneta Bank was airing at the same time Coma Bluff was filming, and Sam from Moneta was also in Coma Bluff, so a lot of people were watching Moneta Bank. So I didn't want Erin and Emily together. So that just kind of it fell. Erin and Meredith had to be together where Emily and Margret had to be together. And then we had some other, relations that we knew of, like Ava and Erin knew of each other. Connor and Beth have the U connection. So we were trying to just separate things like that. And if we didn't know exactly what Traders game people played, we kind of split up things like that. There were a few that played Expedition. So just kind of like eliminating as much as we could of like pregame things. But what we didn't know is Brien hosted Julia. So there are always things that slip through the cracks with things like that. But yeah, it's basically trying to eliminate as many relationships as possible, but also trying to see who might work well together on a tribe.
And
Or
that
who
is
will
one of
butt
the harder
heads.
things. Oh, butt heads. Yeah, we like drama. We do like drama. It makes good TV, and we are, in fact, making a TV product. But that is one of the hard parts about when we cast a season is we find our characters, and we ask people, what's your work experience, right? Like just like we did with you at the beginning of this, David. But
Mhm.
some people in this community play a game like every week, and they can't exhaustively give us their entire org resume with every player they've played with. So we have no idea if they've ended up playing with each other and interacting with each other because, as we've said many times, like the org community is a lot
Yeah.
smaller than it seems sometimes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Uh,
sure.
yeah, and then my next note on this episode is just the amount of dinosaur puns the
Yes.
two of you come up with. Alex, when you guys kind of come up with like a basic script for how to introduce things and everything like that. Was there pun quota for this season? Like, did you guys put in a specific number of puns that had to be met in
Look,
every challenge description?
well, for challenge descriptions, that's all McKenna. McKenna's the one who types up all of our stuff. But whenever there's anything for me, and she asks me like, "Oh, you could put something in," I'm like, "Oh, I'll ad lib," and so
Yeah,
she'll put in my notes, say something stupid about dinosaurs, and I'm like, "Cool,
it was
I
it
only
was
say
quote
stupid things."
dino hype shit.
Yes, yes. There's multiple times throughout the season, and even in my posts for on the socials to be like random dino hype shit. I'm like, okay, I will figure it out when it's stream of consciousness, honestly. All my friends who know me, I say stupid stuff all the time. So why not just entertain myself? Because if I can't laugh,
Mhm.
you guys can't laugh either.
Yeah, it's just the that little like I think we're both fathers at heart, right? So
Yeah, we're dads. That's
yeah.
true.
So yeah, we're like we love a good pun. And this a season like this really like adds to that where like Moneta Bank, there's only so much we could do with the bank puns. We had a little bit in there, but it wasn't as
Well, yeah,
prime.
and like ones in particular was like I kept trying to fit in a way to keep mentioning extinction because I wanted people in the back of their minds to think that potentially there was an edge twist to the game. I don't think it worked, but I really
Yeah.
wanted to put some sort of doubt in some people's mind because if they don't know me, I hate the edge of extinction. But I was like,
Mm.
hey, it's right there. It's low hanging fruit. I'm gonna grab it.
Yeah.
David, what was your response to the theme? Have you, with the orgs you played before, is there a lot of theming like this where it's like this is the general theme that's going on? And do you, as a player, think, oh, it's dinosaur themed, maybe these twists are being applied to it?
For me, the theme, I don't, it could kind of like dictate the aura of the season for me. Like when I think about it,
Hmm.
like I remember one of the reasons why I did my first org was because it was themed in like Greek mythology, and I just love Greek mythology. Like I was a really big Percy Jackson reader as a kid. Loved that more than Harry Potter. Sorry. Like Harry doesn't even do magic in the first 2 years. If you watch the movies, he like kills a thing with a sword, and that's like the most magical thing that he does. Whereas like Percy Jackson in like the first opening 10 chapters kills a minotaur, a harpy, and like a bunch of other stuff. It's just like, all right, cool. So I think that, but that also like kind of dictated a lot of like how I felt about the season afterwards. Like I look back and there's like kind of an epicness to Prometheus's game. It with one of the other games, like the theme was kind of like we're out in the middle of the woods cabin and we're hunting each other. And I definitely played into that one a lot. Like I was like in that one, I was very much so like I'm going to be the villain of this season. I don't care. I remember even at one point I posted in like the Discord chat of like InSync's like puppet dance from because I was just felt like I was so in control of the game, right? And so that definitely like that's what kind of the theme does for me. Like it just kind of helps with the overall storytelling. Again, with the twists and stuff like that, I did think that like it made sense like talking it through like the returning players like makes a lot of sense why it is now just kind of talking about it after the fact. The fact that it was somebody who got rocked out or got hit by a meteor that started this idea, it's kind of funny to me. But for me, I was just in the game so little that I don't reflect on it too much. Like this was just me going in prehistoric times, walking around, stepping on one butterfly too many, and then getting eaten by a T-Rex.
Oh
So, like, that's how I view it, like looking back.
Yeah, that's totally fair. It's hard to reflect on it when you're only there for that single round. But let's get into this immunity challenge. So the first immunity challenge, it's a combination. It's surprisingly something we haven't done before, but it's this combination of beer pong with this 3x3 grid, and you have to get 7 of 9. So, McKenna, where did the number become 7 of 9 instead of just the full 9 blackout with this grid that the tribes have to take turns throwing one ping pong ball at a time to black out
yeah.
their cups?
So I got this challenge from Survivor One World where they launch the coconuts in the slingshot and they have to hit every square out. And I was like, all right, we can do that. And then we challenge tested and was like, all right, this is going on for a pretty long time, but people were starting to hit shots or double hit shots, which we see Ava do. So then we just reduced it a few. So then there's a little bit more wiggle room of where you have to hit instead of like those last few cups where you have to aim at this one spot to win.
Yeah, and like if you even pull from like the current season of Survivor, oh my God, I'm putting us in a chapter of time right now by referencing this. Like you have the comp that Rachel wins with the balls on the that you have to like get the balls down to shoot, and there's
Mhm.
5 spots that you can put it on, but you only had to get 3 balls to stay on the platform. You didn't use all the space. So when we were testing this, we ultimately went down to 7 just because we thought, in theory, by making it 7, it allows a chance for each individual player on the tribe to nail a shot. And it also could be a reason why, unfortunately, like people can't get targeted where, well, I made 3 of the shots, like you have Joseph doing, and you have other people like, well, thank God we won because I made nothing.
Mhm.
Well, speaking of making nothing, David, how was your
Wow.
experience with this challenge?
Okay. So it's kind of sad, like thinking back on it. And because I remember before this challenge, like a couple days before, I was watching a video about baseball and about how they were putting designated hitters in the first spot because of the statistical odds of like if you're batting first out of 9, you're gonna hit the ball more, right? And so I knew this. I knew I'm not very good at challenges. And I still was like I'll put myself in first. Why not? Why not? And I think my reasoning behind it at the time was just like, again, I wanted a reason for people to keep me, and I am kind of like a floor pedal to the floor kind of player, right? Like I want to like really secure my spot somewhere in a tribe, and I really want to dominate with that tribe, right? That's kind of like my initial strategy going into these games. And so for me, I was like, if I could just nail 1 or 2 shots, and I have like the wide open board, like this will be easy, right? I didn't factor in that like one, I never like did a lot of college partying. Like I did like 2 years of like community college, and then I kind of went straight into the workforce as like a freelance web developer. And also like I grew up like super like conservatively Christian, so I wasn't going to parties in high school either. There wasn't like a lot of opportunities for me playing beer pong. I think the one time I played it was at my cousin's like graduation. Not that there's any underage drinking going on, so I just didn't like factor in all these things, like I wanted to play a little bit of hero ball. I knew I had like a lot of opportunity, and I just whiffed, and that's kind of what happens sometimes.
What I also noticed during the scramble time is people are pointing out that you missed and you had the wide open area. But then I'm
Yeah,
like, if David missed and he had the wide open area, that means when Meredith goes, she has the wide open area, but also missed. But because she was second and didn't have that third shot, even if you made it, guys still wouldn't have won the challenge. Like, that's what threw you over. And I'm like, I feel like this is a whole bunch of BS
well,
I
what really
going
well,
threw me
on
over
here
was
with
that
you.
coin flip. That one
Well,
throw really
yeah,
threw me.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah. We'll get there.
truly,
Don't worry. We'll
but
get there.
yeah, sometimes it is what it is. Sometimes the
yeah.
comp
Yeah.
just is not your comp.
Hmm.
I like my hope was that people would look past this and be like, well, look, not every round it's going to be beer pong.
Hmm.
Like the odds of us doing that again throughout the season is 0%. Unless we do something at the end where like we're
It's like a
incorporating all the
redemption. Yeah,
challenges. So
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, he sucked at this, but what else could he be good at? Type of thing.
yeah.
Right. And I mean, to be fair too, like it is very like the way that it was like going on right now, like in that moment, like everyone was like very grouped together, like in all the conversations I had with them. And I didn't I think that the way I look at it, and just to like, get us back into like a moment of time, the way I look at it is it's kind of like a Saul thing, right? Like where Saul gets voted out earlier this season as Survivor. And I think the primary reason he gets voted out is because he didn't really have a clear name, right? He was going after Sue. Oh, he's not going after Sue. He's going after Gabe or Kyle. And nobody really has like a strong opinion on which way they should go. And that's kind of the problem that I face, is that like nobody, like it's between me and Brien. Nobody really cares. They flip a coin and that's decided. And I could look at it and say like, oh, well, that's just bad luck. But it's also on me too, where like I didn't pull people aside for that conversation. Now it's very hard to do. It's very awkward to do in front of like a group setting. But I could have been a little bit more active, and I could have thrown a name out there, or I could have like looking back on it, what I wish I did was I wish I like pulled people aside and been like, hey, like full discrepancy. I know you're talking about me because like all this BS that's going on is like not like because I knew like
Yeah.
it wasn't like I was like completely dumb on it. It's like I know you
Yeah.
guys are talking about me. I totally accept that. Is there any other name? Like I will write down whoever. Just like oh like I know I gave Brien the advantage. I would write Brian's name down in a heartbeat if I knew it was between me and him. Right.
Right.
So like and that's something I could have controlled. It was just like an example of underplaying and maybe being a little bit out of my depth, not really knowing maybe like going a little like not being used to the fast pacedness of the game
Mhm.
and not like in other orgs like having breakout rooms having room limits and stuff like that not realizing that everyone could just like stay in one spot for the entire time and then and then kill the clock which
Yeah,
is something I've done in the past.
the room limit is something that I constantly discuss about in our group, and we've had discussions about it. The thing that ultimately makes it hard is that by creating a room limit, especially with odd number of tribes, is that you
Okay.
instantly just create a dynamic, like sort of what we see in the episode where Erin is talking with Meredith and Logan, being like, "Oh, well, all the other four people are in the other room, so we just have to assume that." They're the bigger numbers. They're talking about one of
That's
us
true
right
too.
now.
Yeah.
It just makes it a little difficult. So it's we almost put it a little more, and maybe it's a little unfair of onto the players themselves to be like, "Hey, we need to break out. We need to actually talk to each other." And in the past few seasons, we've had the people in the game that actively push that to become a thing. So sometimes you just
Yeah.
it's the dynamic of the cast. It's early. We have a lot more West Coasters this time where maybe they're like, I don't even want to care about having to click a button to go to another room. They're like, I'm just gonna sit, wait for my coffee to brew, and see what happens.
I wish I
Yeah.
could see that as more of a factor from my end, but I'm still a pretty younger. I'm still a pretty young guy. Like I could have like been like, oh, let's go to what's it called? I can't remember the room's names at the
Oh, don't
moment.
worry.
But but yeah, no,
And that is kind of neat with this cast is that we have more West Coasters this time because we are so used to being inundated with East Coasters. As a West Coaster myself, it's really early. So it's nice seeing other people suffer along with me as I sit there on production and get to watch these players have to, you know, get used to 8 o'clock in the morning and be ready to dive headfirst into a game of Survivor. And I think it does actually really kind of impact that first round. I think when we even look at some of the people who are in the game who are like saying, "Oh, I'm going to be a little more quiet," they are some more of our West Coasters and our East Coasters, and I think part of like the timing I think does play into that. So future DCP players keep that in mind. You can kind of figure out who's where, not only because they'll probably tell you in the first like 3 minutes of knowing each other, but also just because people who were earlier tend to be a little quieter, unless they're Connor. Connor was not quiet at all.
No.
Uh,
And you know what? I'll vote them all out. You
no,
need this is a social game. I can't wait 3 hours for you to finally wake up. Like at least
right.
David, like the positive with you is that I don't feel like that was the case for you. Like
Mm.
whenever you were in the room, I did see you talking. Like I would peer around into the breakout rooms. I felt like you were in it. I felt like you were bringing up the right things. Now, like looking back on it, do you feel like maybe another issue with that approach of like saying the right things almost comes across as maybe there's people being like, oh, he's just going through the motions.
Right.
Like I don't feel like that's not the perception I have of your interactions, but is that something you've thought of?
I don't know. Like it's weird, right? Because like I always think of Survivor as like more of an emotional game. As much as you could look at it and say that oh it's just like a purely chess game, I don't like that viewpoint on Survivor or these social games. So much of it comes down to like that emotional decision. And so like the biggest example I think of is always like Woo and Tony, right? Like
Yeah.
Woo for sure needs to take Cast to the end. And Cass makes a very logical argument as to why Wu should take her to the end. The biggest one being it's like, oh, you'll be like Fabio, which I think is like a fair comparison, right? You'll be the likable like surfer dude who took somebody that nobody liked to the end, and you win the game, right? And so, but like that doesn't work for Wu. It took Tony being like, hey, like you and I have been playing this game together. You're a martial arts instructor. Like honor means a lot to you. You should take me to the end. And that's what ended up winning Tony the game. And so whenever I go into a situation, sure, it might seem like I'm kind of going through the rounds, but there is like a lot of me just kind of exploring people's humanity and trying to figure out like, okay, that makes people what is it that makes people who they are, right? And so there's always like this genuine curiosity for me whenever I talk to anybody. It's kind of weird. Like it's kind of a weird balancing act because there is like this fear for me where like I feel like I'm a chameleon in some ways where it's like, oh, I don't really care about anyone's emotions. I'm always just like looking for the thing that like is the thumb screw for them so that I can screw them over later. But in talking about it through like therapy and stuff like that, you have to kind of realize like, it is it is kind of your choice what to do with that information. And I'd rather collect that information on people and like get to know who they really are in a genuine sense and just like, and at the end of the day, like be cool with them than not have that information and be too quiet about it. So,
Yo,
yeah.
they made the right call. This dude was winning. This dude was winning. Like if this was Final Tribal Council right now, I was about to write his name on parchment right now.
Well, good thing the cast already wrote his name on parchment.
Right, yeah. They do from moment number one.
Well,
but
before they can do that, John, I think we'd be remiss to not talk about the episode, the title of the episode.
Yeah, well, don't worry, we'll get there. But we actually have to talk about the Tortilla tribe first because they did have a little bit of a segment where we get introduced to them first.
Yeah, I want to talk.
I didn't even
them
watch that part.
based off of what David was saying. Like, it would have been interesting to see if you guys had won because there were a few more quieter people or people worried about how they're communicating because they won. So it would have been interesting for like JB, who's saying, I think I'm either over talking too much, Emily, or it's like trying to be the life of the party because nobody's, saying things. Beth is like, I'm still sleepy and don't know Survivor. Then Emily's like, am I talking too much, talking too little? Should I be more aggressive? Should I lay off? So it would have been interesting had your tribes flopped at what they would have done with this first round because there was a lot of like, what do I do in this situation of winning?
Yeah. And it is definitely a little bit different, right? Like I think it is like if you're not careful, it can be like a lot quieter and like you're just kind of like you start a conversation and everyone's quiet. You start another conversation, everyone's quiet. Like it's very like I never worry too much in those situations only because like I don't know, I'm pretty good at reading a room. I started like after the production season happened, like I started doing like more stand-up comedy and stuff like that. And like when you get up there, you can kind of tell the energy of the room. You look around, there are people like drinking beers or like not really paying attention. And then like it's fun to kind of point that out, just being like, oh, like room's like a little bit chill right now, huh? It's like, all right, cool. Like, do you want to hear a really awesome joke? And it's like everyone's like, oh, okay. And they're like, oh, unfortunately, I don't have anything right now. So let me look at my notebook real quick and like kind of come up with something here on the spot. Just like little tiny icebreakers that you'd have. But that is interesting hearing that like people were like very nervous on the other side, even in winning. Because for me, it'd be like, oh, I won. Like, oh, I could have a cute little awkward conversations, but I don't have to worry about getting voted out. So I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, and being on the winning tribe does make a different dynamic too because people are all in a single room the entire time.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't have that chance to like kind of get the one-on-ones, which is kind of the pros and cons of winning early in one of these minis, right? Like you're kind of thrown into the fire when you lose and you have those opportunities to kind of start making those one-on-one connections. But if you win, you don't have to go to tribal council. So you can kind of make those, I believe it was Emily said it, like it's just like that opportunity, or Margret said it, and you just have that opportunity to kind of like feel everyone out, not one-on-one, but like then you kind of have this idea of who to talk to when you get the opportunity to go one-on-one.
And there's like a clear reason to talk to everybody too. Like it's like, oh, we need to vote somebody out versus like when you win, it's just kind of like, oh, like can sit and relax. What? Like, I don't know. Like,
Yeah. So where are you all from? You get those same
yeah.
like
Yeah.
basic conversations a lot of time. Where are you all from? I said in this one, we obviously see them being like, "Oh, who are the returning players? Like, what are your experiences and things like that." We kind of get a little bit of insight into how everyone's feeling on the Tarchia tribe. Obviously, Joseph went 3 for 3 in his throws in the immunity challenge, and kind of recognized like, yes, clutch. However, maybe people will care about this, so I shouldn't be so clutch in the future. Uh, um, we see Richard talk about laying low, and he makes the observation that there are more women on the tribe than there are men, with a 4-3 split there. Ava also realizes that and is like, hey, you know what? Let's work with the women. That's pretty sick. Let's do that.
Hmm.
Um, we get Margaret and Emily both talking about, returning. They're back. They're raring to go, ready to take this game on. Kind of glad not to have to go to tribal council for that first one. JB notices the dynamics of the tribe and everyone's kind of a little quieter. So hopefully he can liven things up a bit. And Beth is just sleepy.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do have to comment and give my flowers to McKenna here. I loved the editing choice of the through line for the going through the Tarchia side of the episode, where you start with Joseph talking about like, oh, I really need to like bring down my threat level so that people don't think I'm just a comp beast. Cued straight into Richard's confession, like, well, we have this comp beast and he's doing great. But damn, there's more women on this tribe. Cutting to Ava being like, I've never been on a tribe where there's more women on the tribe. This is fantastic. You have like the scenes where they're talking about the players, and then you instantly cut to Emily freaking out that like, damn,
Don't put me on
you are
blast.
like, it was some good editing choices there, and
Thank you.
I think it helps create the good narrative of that tribe.
Hmm.
Mhm. And then we get kind of some of the like out of game dynamics where Joseph and Erin have played a game together previously and it didn't go well. So there's potentially tension there. Ava also knows Erin from the like Michigan State
Michigan
U of
live.
M lines. Just being in a state together apparently is a thing. And then we get Richard talking about practicing for challenges. And we've had a few people in the past who get really dedicated when they get cast in our seasons, and they go rewatch every season and they see the challenges and they're like, oh, maybe I should test this out. And he's testing building the cup pyramid and then realizes we don't have enough cups for that. There's no way this is a challenge. But in doing so, reads over the rules again and finds a clue that simply there are different colored words in the rules text, and it says "shot in the dark," message Alex and McKenna. David, did you notice this at all in your rules?
No. Because if I knew there was a shot in the dark, I definitely would have been playing at that time. Like, no questions asked. There was a part of me that was like, even when I remember McKenna saying like, "This is an opportunity to play an advantage." Does anyone would anyone like to play an advantage? I was thinking to myself, I'd like to, like I would love the opportunity to. I don't have anything right now, but that's a bummer too, because it showed a little bit more in your control than you initially think.
Hmm. We actually
Well,
had
David,
more people say like ask for shot in the dark pre-game than actually asked for it in game because we were like, well, no, we can't give you anything right now because the game hasn't started.
But that's not how
So
we phrased it.
no,
Like
we're like,
Julia says it best because Aaron also messaged me consistently the week heading into the game, shot in the dark, and I kept going like, I don't know what you mean. So it's
yeah.
like essentially anyone who asked me got the shrug emoji, and
Mhm.
that's all the context I gave them.
Yeah.
And for some of them, they still tried. Like Julia tried when we got the game started. Richard tried again when the game started. I was sort of surprised more didn't.
Hmm.
Yeah. All right.
David, what's your impression on the shot in the dark? I mean, there are many podcasts out in the world where you can hear McKenna, Alex, and I talk about the shot in the dark. So, what is your impression of the shot in the dark as a player with it possibly in your arsenal?
Hmm. I actually, again, I don't know what your guys' takes on, so this might be a hot take or not. I think it's actually pretty. I think it's really good for the player, right? Like I think it's actually a lot better for the player and a lot better for production because of the fact that like it does force more conversations, right? Like if everybody knew that I had a shot in the dark, they would have very quickly found like I would have very quickly been like, I'm playing it. Like I don't care about any of you people. Like I'm gonna play it. You better think of a new plan, or like I'm gonna do it, right? And that creates like this interesting like tension within the tribe. And it creates like the conversation of, well, maybe we shouldn't vote out David, right? Where it's not like such an easy it's not like such an easy vote out in that situation. Kind of reminds me a little bit of like how Big Brother introduced the AI arena and how that
Mhm.
caused a lot more chaos in the season, but also made the season a lot more fun. And people would one of the reasons why people would split their votes was because they just simply didn't know who was going up by the end of the week, right? And so I think that adding that little bit of chaos to the season, like at first I think people looked at it and were like, oh, this is kind of weird. Like, why would they do this? But then looking back on it, I think it does create just like that perfect amount of chaos where it's like, okay, we need to consider all the possibilities versus like, oh, this is like an easy boot, like of the early seasons of Survivor, right? So I don't know. I think it's a net positive.
I've grown to the point where I agree with you.
Yeah.
Again, like at first it was like, what's the point of this? It isn't being used that often, but in Survivor, your vote is the most important thing in the game, in my
Mhm.
opinion.
Yeah.
And having this chance at safety in exchange for the vote is a very difficult puzzle to navigate. And it's really difficult to decide when to leverage that. And perhaps in an instance where not everyone knows about the shot in the dark existing is disadvantageous to the players. Whereas if everyone knows the shot in the dark's there, maybe there was more conversation to be had this time around because of that. Because this would have been a very, if, for instance, you did have a shot in the dark, all of a sudden there are two stray votes going elsewhere when we get to this vote. And where does it
Yeah.
end up after that? What's the decision? So it's just interesting seeing how everything plays out with a shot in the dark and how it changes the strategic approach you have to take to the game because you need contingencies at that point.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Oh, speaking of advantages, there is one that we haven't mentioned yet, and that is the dig site.
The dig
And
site.
JB mentions it. It's interesting. So, Alex, talk us through the dig site. What is the dig site, and where did this idea come from?
So it was our way of like incorporating the theme and also having like a sort of a different way to get the path to the idol. Because you can really only do so many things in a live mini format on Zoom for how do you get something. And I was very much of the mind of like, well, let's limit stuff. And between us and Austin, when we were prepping for this, we got to the idea of, well, what if we dig for fossils? A fossil is essentially a clue. If you get a certain amount of fossils, in this case, two, because, how many rounds can there really be in the pre-merge? If you can get two of them, you'll get a clue for the idol. So that was sort of like just the mindset for it, and just having the dig site was just more of like our little cutesy way of there's a grid here, guess spots.
Yeah, we were also like, how do we make it not be Moneta Bank where we don't go into a separate room to dig?
Yes.
How do we navigate? Does everybody have the same grid? Do we want them to have the same grid where they can talk and share where fossils are, which clearly we talk about later in Tribal Council, but like that was another social dynamic that we were like, this could be really interesting to have them talk about these where they found the fossils because then that gives more people the clue, then that you have less of a shot. So do you talk about it? Do you not? So it was just kind of a way, like Alex said, to get something out there that you don't necessarily know what it is yet, but you know you need it.
Yep. And it's a good way to show trust, but like how much trust do you really want to share with the entire tribe, essentially?
Yeah, and we see JB mentioning that in his confessional, where he's talking about the fact that he's found a fossil, but what does he do with it? Does he keep it to himself, or does he share that information? Does he share it to build trust with everyone? Is there a danger in doing so? And I mean, we'll dive in more with it. You know what? Let's just talk about it now because David, at Tribal Council, you just flat up say, "I found a fossil at C3 or D3," and it kind of started this cascade of everyone talking about whether or not they found a fossil and which they talked about. Was that something that you think, if you had mentioned earlier, could have changed the outcome of this vote? Or do you think, and were you throwing it out there as kind of a last ditch effort to protect yourself? Or do you think it was just like, actually, like as you say in the episode, you are more intent on just building trust at this point because you would rather work with this group of people that you've been randomly put with than find an advantage for yourself later on in the game?
Well, John, I do appreciate that you're giving me the benefit of the doubt that this was like in any way like all the BS I was spouting at the end of like, oh, tribe unity, rah rah rah, was like there's any truth to it. No, it was totally me just trying to save my own ass. It's like, I was like, I think I kind of what I think it would have been a lot. I have thought about it afterwards. Like, I think it would have been a lot more beneficial to bring it up earlier, just because it would have started the conversation of like, oh, maybe we should keep David. But as far as like in the moment, like the reason why I brought it up was because I started to realize I wasn't having that conversation of like why we should keep David around. And it was it was just like, like I thought about it and I was like, I've been playing it really chill. I've been playing it really cool up to this point because I also don't want to create a situation where I freak out and just like start over scrambling and then I look like an idiot on the episode. And then get voted out, or even stay and then get voted out the very next vote. Like I'm always thinking about the end game, which was maybe to my detriment this go around. But in that moment, I was like, I need something. I need anything to start a conversation to keep me around. And so, just off the cuff, I revealed I had it. I came up with the whole tribe, ooh rah rah speech, like why we should all stay together, just off the cuff. And I is very desperate. And then as soon as I did that, and as soon as Brien was like, "I also have a fossil," I was like, "Gosh, dang it, Brien! Like, don't
Well,
steal my thunder."
well, I will say though, it's like a lot of the things that happened for the episode, like obviously the coin flip, and the people made outside of one decides to stick to that. But I don't know. It's like I see both ways of like still staying true to your vote and be like, it doesn't matter what David says or brings up, like I'm gonna send him out anyway. But in the early game, I feel like stability and someone that at least feels like someone that you can collaborate with and talk with is important. And yes, Brien does bring up his cell block that he found, but only because you've said it first and he knows that he's
Like
also
you
someone
gave
in
him the
danger.
courage. Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
so to me, Brian's doesn't hold any weight to me because he didn't bring it up willingly. He only brought it up because he's like, well, crap, the other person who potentially is going out said it. So now I need to say it so that we're equal. But when you're coming off and you're saying that, you give your speech, and yes, you're just saving your own butt, but the impression feels a little more genuine. At least it's like you come off very calm throughout whenever you're talking. Like you don't feel like you're feeling the pressure. And I think that part of the feeling the pressure can go both ways of like, okay, this dude's calm. He can be a reliable ally. Let's change the vote. Or this dude knows that he's a target and he's still so calm.
Yeah.
Oh, we need to get him out now.
Right.
What's also
It's like such a tough
interesting
balance.
is
Yeah.
you and Brien, the perceived people on the bottom of the tribe, are the only two on the tribe to find a fossil. Everyone else is just like, I missed, I missed, I missed, I missed. And so now they are like, all right, thanks for the fossil, David. And then Brien is presumably, if this tribe goes to tribal council, the next one to go, and they already took his fossil too. So I was like, this group of five is a little vicious.
Yeah, a little bit. So, but yeah, I think yeah. And then to your point, Alex, like that is another thing that I realized throughout org playing is that like people want to like collaborate early. And so knowing that that was like a big part of my pitch of just like, yeah, all of us together, I will die for this tribe, like it's so interesting like seeing like how the pre-merge and the post-merge interact, whereas like pre-merge is all about sticking together, and then post-merge is all about like finding the people you actually want to work with versus
Right.
like, yeah, it's
Yes.
really fascinating.
And it really just goes into like it's all luck also at the beginning. It's like if you
Yeah,
went into the room that Erin was in, that was like the minority, but like Erin was the one in her confessional be like, everyone's staying quiet, everyone's staying in one room. But you're in that room with her saying those things.
oh yeah,
I think then she becomes a little more vocal even at the coin flip, being like, because in her confessional she even says like, if it was up to me, I would probably vote Brien, not David. But the group
yeah.
is voting, at least after I'm going to put trust in them. And everyone says that in their confession. Like, if I'm putting trust in this group, then it's going to be David because that's what the coin said.
Right. And and that's the thing too, is like perception becomes reality at that point, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's not necessarily that everybody wants to vote me out. It's just that that's what the perceived mood is. And so people just follow that along. Except for Logan, which I really appreciate. I was talking with him in the group
Your your P
chat.
your PNW brother.
I know. If he had just pulled me aside and was like, "Hey, we gotta vote, we gotta start pitching Brian," I would have been like, "All right, cool." Like, but like, it's just again, it's just again, like that speaks to the luck though portion of it, and just like not having enough time as well. Like I think we talked a little bit about room limits. I think the way that that gets broken up is that unfortunately is like just having like a lot more time allotted to you, where it's like you like I think Survivor does that really well, where it's like, oh, like yeah, we could all stick in the camp, but we need water. We need to like, do all this other
Yeah.
stuff. And unfortunately, that's just not an opportunity that was like given to me.
I
But
think it was also ill-timed that you and Brian went together. Went because we had
Yeah.
Yeah.
two
Yeah.
confessional rooms for this season, and so both you and Brian got pulled, but John, Ian, Lily, Morgan, they don't know what's going on in the scramble rooms. They just say, I need X, I need Y, I need Z, and then Carrie sends him out. She's not even with, the losing group either. So it's really blind on who gets pulled, but if you and Erin get pulled at the same time and Brian and Connor get pulled at the same time, I don't know that we see this
true.
either. I think it was just
Yeah.
all of the luck was just not on your side.
Yeah. All you needed was Connor to get pulled and they don't have a coin to flip.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know. Yeah,
A
that's
goose,
crazy
if
to
you
think about.
will.
So
Well,
sorry,
yeah.
a
No,
goose.
we're not there yet. We're getting there. Don't worry. Um, so this actually comes to one of my favorite editings you've ever done, McKenna. And it is during Meredith's confessional. And
I'm
Meredith
sorry,
is just
Meredith.
talking about how terrible her performance in this challenge is and says that her worst challenge performance ever was her first experience in DCP with throwing balls into cups. And you take the clip from Ricky
Mhm.
and you zoom into the square of Meredith, just balls going everywhere. It was so funny. And
I'm
Meredith, I'm so sorry you had to relive that moment.
I'm sorry, Meredith, but
She's not.
it needed to happen. It just needed to happen.
Look, it's on footage. It's free use.
You said we could use your image.
It was a
So
great choice.
so we do get some talking on the Sardonis tribe, and there's a lot of like these smaller groups kind of coming, and it's mostly because people are being pulled away for confessionals and everything like that. Because like as McKenna said, we had two confessionals going. We're trying to speed up the minis just a little bit. So the
Mhm.
best way to do that is get two people at a time. And also I think it does have this other thing where it doesn't make it so like, hey, this one person's gone, let's vote for them. As we even saw in this, hey, these two people are gone, let's vote for them. Which one of these two, right? It at least starts some sort of conversation there. Whereas one person getting pulled, it'll be like, yeah, cool. So it's just that person then.
Sure.
So as unlucky as you got, David, there was some luck involved with there being two people at the same time.
Yeah, like,
Uh,
and that's why I have like a struggle like talking about it, where it's like I could like thinking about coming into this is like I could have like pitched the narrative. Oh yeah, like got a coin flip, whatever, right? Like I'm still pretty awesome, right? Or I could, or I could lean too much into the oh no, this was like 100% my fault, right? Like this is like there's so many things that I could do. There's so many things that I've done wrong. And so like you have to realize though, like when you're playing these games, it is like both, right? Like there is like a little bit of luck and there is like things in your control. And maybe it's like 40-40, or maybe it's like 40-40-20, right? Of like things
Mhm.
you could do, things other people do, and then the luck that's like in involved in all of that. And so, and I think you can definitely switch it up. Like if you do a lot more, like you have the potential to increase your luck and increase your ability to rely on others. Or if you do too much, you can decrease that as well. So it's all just like a hodgepodge of like luck, other people, and what you're able to do with your abilities. And so trying to find that
Truly.
balance has been tough.
Well, it's like you even have like if you going to luck, like they do the coin flip, and at a certain point, Connor goes like, "Oh, who was even designated for goose?" And like
Yeah.
if I was someone who like even had an inkling that like, oh, I wanted to work with you, I would have just been like, it was Brien. Brien was the goose. And
Yeah.
like, but like no one would be able to really fact check, and like who's really if both you and Brien are the options, is like who's really going to push hard now to be like, no, it was David who was the goose. This deal's over. Like then
Right.
be like, okay, it's Brien.
We get
Yeah.
Logan in his voting confessional being like, when you flip a coin, then you know what your gut is. And so if Logan just was just like, it was Brien. I think it was Brien was that. Then like it could have been
It could
a
have been me.
a
Yeah.
different story here because he could have then created the narrative.
And like we see this vote go so many different ways. Like I don't remember the last time we've had a vote like this right off the bat
Oh
where
no.
over half the tribe gets their name down on parchment. And I'm like,
I'm very proud of that fact.
well, it's like, well,
That's
it's
the one
like,
thing I could take away.
and it's like, let's say like Logan stuck true to it. It was like a 5-1-1 instead. It's like, maybe it's because of how we had the game format and that people who knew about certain advantages already had those advantages. It's like, because if Julius knows that there's a shot in the dark, then you're like, well, I'm going to assume that other people know that there's a shot in the dark and maybe they can play it. Stacking your vote was like, I was just like, that's bold. Like to me, I'm like, it's going to work, but it's so bold because like, what if we did hide a one-time idol right at the beginning of the game, and
Right.
Julia only found the other advantage that you could find at the beginning of the game?
Yeah.
It's like
I think
there's risk there.
that is a credit to the other players though, because sometimes you just kind of have to go with your gut and kind of have to
Yeah,
like just like do what you have to do, right? And I think Logan, as much as like I could be like Logan, like him making the
and you
coin flip
should.
comment. I'm too chill of a guy, Alex.
I know, I know.
But as much as I could be like, Logan, him making the coin flip comment, I think really solidifies that. And it's something I would have done too, like in that moment, right? Like just to like kind of gently remind everybody, we know what we're gonna do. Like, okay. And I think it was a good move on his part doing that. I think as much as you can like as much as you can freak out about like because you can if you're not careful like you can go through a whole spiral as a survivor player being like oh what if this happens what if these two are working together what if Brien and David they both revealed they have a fossil what if they're going to put them together and that's going to create a super idol or something right like
Yeah.
like you can't overly freak out about those kind of things and at some point you just got to be like look I'm gonna vote out who I want to vote out. That is like the one lame thing about the tribe though too. The fact that like it took a coin flip. Like you couldn't just like say, oh, like this guy's likable. We're voting him out, right? Like I like it better when players like take the
Give a
initiative
reason.
or somebody's like tricking somebody into doing the coin flip. Kevin and BB can, right? Like
Right.
tricking everybody to like pull out the gummy bears. But that wasn't the situation. It literally was just a coin flip, and that is actually kind of
Well,
infuriating in some
well,
ways.
to be fair, the what if the reason was I'm here to cause shenanigans?
Yeah,
That's true
that was
too.
Connor's dilemma.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that is true. Well, speaking of this coin flip, I guess it's time that I talk about this. Connor,
yeah.
Yeah.
you're Canadian. Your coin
Mhm.
is called a loonie. There's no goose on the Canadian $1 coin. It is a loon, hence the name loonie.
Mhm.
It's not because it's just a
It's
little
fitting.
wacky like you
Listen,
are.
It's
he's
fitting.
trying to speak to us Americans. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't
I'm
know.
To
sure
be
you guys
fair,
know
to be
a
fair,
loon is a
I know.
to be fair, he got called Toronto Blue Jays in this episode.
Because of his hat.
You gotta call people something.
Yeah.
If you don't know their name, like, what would you rather call them?
MFing Blue Jay
white
here. Yes.
Yeah.
Anyways, so this coin flip, I agree, David. I prefer it if someone like actually said a name. However, Connor's MO was just creating chaos, so it was still like planned technically. And like there was that point again. There's that conversation of what do you base this first vote off of? You don't really have much going on. Haven't had the opportunities to talk. We do see Logan talking about, well, now I kind of want David this day and I want Brien gone. And we see Meredith even saying, I kind of would have preferred David sticking around. But the conversations weren't there. And they didn't, the thing is they didn't take that information and do anything with it either. Right?
Yeah.
Like, if this coin flip happens and Logan's like, I wanted to show up Brien. Why didn't he push up Brien's name? We'll have to find out when we get to Logan later on in the season. But it is interesting seeing this group just be like, I'm okay with this, because I feel like that is how a lot of people take this first round. And I think it honestly can be the mistake of a lot of org players in a first round of a mini, of being a little nonchalant about the first vote and being like, whatever, we'll just go with the numbers, and not actually taking the time to figure out what's best for them moving forward.
Yeah.
I really attribute it a lot to time, right? Like if I had like even like 30 minutes more where like I'm talking to, like I get a chance to talk to Logan, or I get a chance to talk to Meredith, then I think it's a much different like situation, right? It's like an episode of Survivor where like they do the coin flip early, and then like all of a sudden I do my thing, talk to everybody, do the "Hey, I'm a cool guy" kind of thing, and then all of a sudden Tribal Council comes out, everyone's like referencing the coin flip, and then all of a sudden like it's Brien getting voted out instead of me, and then I look at the camera and wink, and you know, like that's. But again, like with orgs and with how fast paced they can be, I think that you kind of lose that opportunity a little bit. And there's really nothing you can do about it. Like that's not like a complaint. It's just kind of like a general observation I'm making about it. I just find it kind of fascinating.
And John, it's sort of like, and it's weird me being the one to like bring this up because I'm someone who like likes to believe that luck isn't a true factor, like it's a factor, but it's not a true factor. With people, it is truly luck on who is someone who can get away with being nonchalant about a vote, who are the people that get away with being a full enforcer of a vote, especially early on. Because like that's an issue that a lot of us had a fear of for Erin, because you hear it throughout the episode, like people like, oh, Erin seems like a leader. Like Erin is more vocal. There was some like there's stuff that doesn't make the cut for the episode that like also sort of sheds that type of light, where it's like if you're someone who's expected to make that type of vote, like people may want to keep you around as a shield, and you get away with being like, well, this is what I want to happen in this first vote. I want Brien gone. I want David on my side. And they're like, okay, we'll do that because other players feel it's more beneficial for them. Like you sort of hear with Richard in this episode of being like, I want to sort of be more of a fly on the wall. I don't want to be the person that people are talking about. I want to just be there. And essentially, like, I'm not saying for Richard, I just mean generally, like, I just want to be there and be mid. Like, I just want to be someone who's there that everyone's like, yes, this is a person who is existing on this tribe. And they get to get away with it.
Yeah. And I think too, like what's also interesting is that like I've never really been in this position before. Like usually I'm kind of like the person driving a vote, right? And like if I was in that position of power and I had to choose between like Brien and Meredith, for example, then I would have made a choice. Like it would have just been like, all right, we're not doing like if Connor brought out the coin flip and like I was in the room, I would be like, no, we're not doing a coin flip. Like let's actually talk about this like human beings and like make a choice because I don't know, like it would have been, and I would have like talked to Brien and Meredith too, just being like, because there's always like an opportunity of whoever's on the bottom can be your like closest ally at the end. And so I was a little surprised that people didn't take that opportunity either, you know. But yeah, I think like the combination of everything of like not being in control and like not being in that position for definitely led to my early exit as well. So
Well, this hypothetical situation you've drawn now of Brien versus Meredith, which I mean, was probably a possibility at some extent because, like we said, Meredith kind of had that poor challenge performance and everything. That kind of changed that a decision between those two rather than you and Brien would kind of determine a way forward for the game because that's the decision between a new DCP player and a returning DCP player.
Yeah.
So it could really change the dynamic of how things move forward. And we even see Brien in this conversation being like, yo, let's go for returning players because they know DCP. They're going to know things. They're going to know what to look for. They're going to know how to approach this game. And we see Meredith saying, man, all the returning players are women. Does this put more of a target on women? So McKenna, let's speak to that here.
Yes.
Yeah.
The decision to bring back only women as returning players. And does that paint a target on women who, as Meredith mentions, tend to get targeted earlier in these games?
So I didn't think of this. I was actually in Meredith's confessional room, didn't think of any of the target on now for women. We just struggle so hard to get an even gender split or even sometimes even close. Like our first season we had 2 out of 12. Then
Hmm.
we've had 3 out of 14. I think our max is 5 out of 14.
Yeah.
So we just wanted to try and get 7 and 7 and wanted to confirm with people. Typically, if a returnee's coming back, they're gonna be there. So this is also the first season that we haven't had to call someone in the ninth hour to join the
Yes.
cast and play
Good
because
And
job,
we had
us.
4 people locked in here that we knew were coming and were women. So like that was our main MO of wanting to get these returning fossils to be women because we have so many more male applicants than we do women applicants. And then we have at least 4 confirmed, which is like, all right, 2 per tribe. We can deal with that otherwise. But Meredith brought up of women have a target coming in, and now 4 automatically have a huge target on their back because of returning players. And it was just an interesting perspective to bring up that I didn't think about coming in and like
well,
casting either.
so it's something I thought about, but ultimately, my goal was I wanted to see as close to an even gender split as possible because there's been times where we had it. And like McKenna said, ninth hour, someone drops, someone drops, someone drops. And then when multiple people drop right before the game, also, then you're like, well, we have to go through who applied that we know will come because we send out a forum saying, like, in the event that someone drops, you are high on our list to come
Mhm.
in. Will you be available if we call you within the 24-hour period heading into the game? And a lot of times it's the guys.
Mhm.
So having these people here just helped like certify that we could see a new thing for us, which is what happens when there's an even amount of guys and girls in a game. Because it does change the game. We heard multiple people talk about in this episode of the perspective of like a 4 versus 3, where there's a majority of women on a tribe, which we've never had. And in terms of the target, in my opinion, it's sort of the beast of the game where we're giving you the challenge of having to overcome being a returner. Like obviously, there's also the factor of being a woman returner, but it was also showing a vote of confidence from us that you were the 4 people that we thought could get past that. You have the tools in front of you that could work in your favor to get past being an early target and going out purely just because you are a returner.
Mhm.
Yeah, and give Meredith credit. She even Brien didn't vote for her,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is highly annoying.
Well, I think there's one more thing we need to talk about before we get to tribal council here, and we unfortunately get to your untimely demise here, David. But that is Julia's question advantage. So McKenna, talk to us about first off, remind us how Julia found this advantage, and then how the idea of this vantage came to be in the first place.
So Austin dropped a parchment in the chat during the challenge or like right after introductions were done, something to that effect, like right in the beginning of the game. He just dropped it. We didn't acknowledge it, nothing. So you could do whatever you want with it. And then I had thought of, oh, maybe we let them break the wall a little bit, not doing anything egregious of like, does X person have an idol? But maybe they could ask us a question to get some information in the game. And so I brought it to Alex. I was like, I would love to make this work. How do we make this
Yeah.
work? And he really like helped form how this, like, what questions to ask, how they do it, when they do it, where they do it, and all that. So really, I was like, I want these questions maybe added, and then he brought up, well, since we have the dig site, let's add the fossil. So Julie has a list of about 6 questions that she can ask production, either in the voting booth or with you, John, in the winner's scramble, in her winner confessional. And we'll see what she chooses for it, but it was just a new type of advantage that I wanted to like sprinkle in, that I really got like Alex's strategic brain to make it work. Like
Yes,
I come
because
up with a lot of ideas and then he
yes.
just like makes them work.
Yeah, so to put it all in perspective, I am a very much, for the most part, a big ideas guy until you give me information, and then like as McKenna knows how to like sort of heat up that engine for me to then be like, oh, here's all the things that we can do with this and maximize what can happen with it. It's very much a team effort with everything that's put in here. It's not all just McKenna just spewing all these ideas and be like, yeah, that's good. Let's do that.
Yeah,
It very much takes a village to work these out because we care. We care so much about the advantage. We don't just want to have an advantage out there for the sake of having an advantage. We want it to have a purpose. We want it to be like a little fun on how you can play around with it. And this is an advantage that has never been in the real show that I think would be interesting to have. Like, obviously, there's questions in there that I feel in some ways are a little meaningless, but that's the point. It's like, how do you want to use it? Do you want to just throw it away and be like, hey, I have this advantage, but I just wanted to know this. I can now assure you that merge is happening next round. So all we need to do is stick together here and we all make jury.
yeah.
Or if you're like, is there an idol currently in this game right now? And I say no, or John says no, you know 100% for a
Your
fact that
target.
it's the
Yeah.
truth. It's the truth, and you know that the plan that you need to happen can happen. And now you can be like, I had this advantage. I got to ask this. They told me this. It's the only time where you can use production as a strategy.
Yeah.
And that was the big concern, was not having a question that allowed you to manipulate production as a form of strategy.
Plus,
Yeah.
not that I know how the advantage like played out, but like knowing how people are too, it's like also it's interesting you talk about the collaborative process of creating the advantage, but there's also a collaborative process of people like using the advantage. It's like, okay, like do I share this like how do I share this information? And then if I do share it, seeing how the players will eventually use it in a way that maybe you didn't even think of because now they're working together and like how can you even account for that possibility as well. And we see that a lot with like the knowledge is power, right? Like
Yep.
once it and like even if I have thoughts on the knowledge power. Like even if it's like overpowered, people still figure out like through collaboration are able to figure out like how to overcome it. Or like Cowboy in season 13 of Survivor. Like if people had talked to Cowboy more, they would have been like, oh, there is a way to counter Yule's idol that we didn't really think about just through collaboration. I think that's also a good reason why to introduce like new advantages into like these types of games because you never know what's going to happen.
Absolutely. It's actually almost unfortunate that there's already an advantage in Survivor called the knowledge is power, because that would be the perfect name for this advantage, and we can't
Yeah.
use it because that's
No.
something completely different.
So it's the
But
question advantage.
it's the question advantage. And so these are the questions that were available. Where is a fossil in the dig site? When is the merge? Is blank advantage in or will be in the game? Is it a final 2 or final 3? What is the next challenge? And when is a round with no scramble time? So these are all either questions that have become relevant based on the beginning of the game with like the fossil and the dig site, so everyone knows about those already. Or there are things based on previous DCP seasons. We've had seasons with final 2s and final 3s, so it's a reasonable question to ask. All of our seasons so far have had a round with no scramble time, so you can assume that like even like when is a round with no scramble time, yeah, you could glean the information oh, there's going to be a round with no scramble time from this.
But if
But
you
there
just
might not
watch a
be.
season, you just know like it's like
And
it's like
but also you can
referred
read
to.
into the question.
Mhm.
Like you have the when is a round with no scramble time? I would then start thinking, wait, could there be multiple? Like, are you
Yeah.
saying there's more than one time where I'm not going to have any opportunity to talk outside of right in front of everyone?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like, there's things that can happen there.
So, David, of these 6 questions, if you got this advantage, which would you be more inclined to ask? And when in the game would you use it?
Um, I think based on my position, probably looking at like what can I do to help the tribe now, and so asking what the next challenge would be like very tempting to ask. Just based like purely on like what actually happened. If I was in
Mhm.
like an ideal situation where I would wait until potentially the merge to use the advantage, only because I would want to make sure like okay, like I have all my ducks in a row, like and ask the question of is there like an idol in play, or is there like an
Mhm.
advantage in play in that scenario? Just because that does like affect like that does affect the plan quite a bit, right? Like how much do I need to rely on the other tribe now? Or can I just like do my hoorah rah speech of like of like we are tribe, we are strong, and then vote out the person I want to vote out? And so that would be like a crucial piece of information that I would want in that moment. Or late in the game when it's like, all right, like if I had a pretty good sense of like everything going my way, then at later, even like later in the game when it's like, okay, now there's like the big target I need to get rid of.
Mhm.
Okay, how can I use this to get rid of them? Right. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, that takes us to tribal council, and tribal council is pretty straightforward. In the end, we have four
yeah,
people voting with a coin. We have one person voting against said coin. You vote for Meredith. Brien votes for Logan. But unfortunately, those 4 votes with the coin are enough to get you out of the game, David.
yeah,
But you're still not done. There's one last twist coming your way. As the first person voted out of the game, you have the opportunity to give someone the legacy advantage, and you end up giving it to Brien. So just walk us through your thought process of who you were giving this advantage to, and how you thought it would help them in the game moving forward.
yeah. Well, one thing I was before I get into that, one thing I was kind of sad about was that in my voting confessional with Alex. Meredith came in a little bit early as I was revealing my vote.
Oh,
I'm kind of sad
yeah.
that I'm kind of sad that didn't make the
That
episode.
that did
You
happen.
might see it in the bloopers later on. We were
That's like
working
another.
out the double breakout room situation. We got it figured out after that.
Yeah, but thank you. I was
And
as a,
I'm just there being like, don't worry, she did not see it. I'm like, she probably saw it, but I'm not gonna let you. I was just like, do what you were going to do. Don't because my whole thing was like, don't let that dictate how you're if you're suddenly gonna change your vote here.
no,
Like
it
in
wasn't.
my head, I knew it didn't matter, but I was like, you need to stick true.
Yeah, no, like I wasn't gonna change it based off that. It was just like it was just kind of like this weird, funny thing that happened, and it's even more funny. We'll talk about that later. But let's see. As far as like my decision making and why I chose Brian, um, it's just because of lack of information. You know, like I didn't really have anybody. Nobody really approached me with the idea of being in alliance. Nobody really voted with me. Like I was the sole Meredith vote. And so the only thing I had to go off of was the fact that Brian stepped up and like revealed that he had a fossil. Now, looking back on it, would have I given it to somebody else? Probably, still probably not, just because of like the information I had.
Mhm.
But it does suck knowing that like coming in here now, knowing that Brian is a potential like second boot, knowing that I basically just gave an advantage off and like here, and it's going to be maybe hot potatoed around. That's kind of sad. But I don't know. We'll see. Like I'm excited to watch and see what Brian potentially does with it. So
I mean, I can't complain about the potential of the legacy advantage having to exchange hands most of the time. You kind of want that. You don't want someone holding on to this advantage the entire
It's
time.
actually so interesting how few times it has rotated hands in our games. Like
yeah,
McKenna always shows the list of everyone in our game that has it, and it's still small enough that you can have it on one side of it.
right.
And we've what now we've had this is our seventh mini. This is
It
we've had
started in the
All
second
Stars.
mini.
We've
Yeah.
had 3 long games. Like
Yeah.
we've had a lot of games, and I've what our first time using it, what,
While
season
I'm on a
4?
beach.
Oh
I mean,
yeah, we
like
did use
Season
it a lot of
two.
mono.
I mean,
Yeah.
even like in regular Survivor, like what,
Mhm.
there's like maybe 5 people that have
Yeah.
had it. Like I
It's
can't.
that yeah, it's truly interesting. And again, it goes into luck of like people who get it and then are able to play in a way where it's just like they're not going to target me until like I absolutely need to play it.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting.
Well, that brings us to the end of the episode, the end of your journey, David. So your
Yeah.
journey was short, but what was your favorite moment or your favorite thing about the time you did get to play?
My favorite moments, I think like looking back on it, like I think the one thing I can always take away from like doing these orgs is that it is experience, right?
Mhm.
Like let's say hypothetically, like this is very hypothetical. Like let's say I do get on Survivor. Now I know what the feeling is of like walking into like a room of my tribe and them being like, "Oh, we're going based off vibes, David. Don't worry about it." It's like, okay, then now I know what to do. I need to start pulling people aside. And so I can look back on the experience in that way and say, like, this is a net positive, Like I got voted out. It kind of sucked. It's always embarrassing a little bit. But I could always look back on it and say, like, it was a good experience nonetheless. I learned something and it wasn't like it was for like $1 million, right?
Mhm.
Like so that's what I could kind of take away from it. And then also everyone was super nice. It was actually a lot harder to vote out Meredith than I thought it would be. Like like how you like watch like a scary movie and you feel like those gut cramps and you're like not sure why. I was like, I don't know why I'm voting out Meredith. I can't think of anybody. Like that's how it felt in that moment. It was kind of nice, like being on a tribe where I could feel that way about everybody. So good job on production casting.
Thank you. It is something we do take pride in, actually, as our
Yeah,
casting. So
yeah. There are a
definitely
lot of
glad to
dynamic
hear.
characters.
Wow.
Yeah, thank you.
David knows exactly what to
I'm
do
gonna
here.
leave now.
Well, actually, I have a couple questions over on the Facebook group
All right.
that were directed at you here.
Sick.
Um, Austin Garso, production member Austin Garso, who makes all of our graphics and helped design Como Bluff as a game,
And drafted David.
and
He did
drafted you,
draft
David, and
David.
drafted you.
Is that his first or
Just want
second pick? Just out of curiosity. I tried watching the video
I
and then
can't
I was
remember.
like,
You were well, watch the video and
Yeah,
you'll find out.
find out. Uh,
fine. I'll
Austin
hit
would
the
like to
like
know
and
what's one of
notification.
Austin would like to know what one of your favorite weekly adventures you've gone on recently is.
Let's see. It's been a while since I've gone on anything because it's just been Christmas time.
Mhm.
Um, let's see. I started dating and I have a girlfriend now, and so for Christmas or for Thanksgiving, we ended up driving up like an hour away to meet my extended family in Bellingham. And that's like, and then we ended up driving an hour back to meet up with her family, like in the same day. That was a lot of fun. And then, like I've been doing a lot more board game nights with my friends. We started playing this game called The Crew. I highly
Oh,
recommend it.
yes,
And
yes.
also, if Facebook group, if you're like, oh, I really want to play something like Clue, but not Clue, just hit me up. Like send me a message. I'll give you a recommendation. I love board games, and
Yes.
so anything I can think of, I'll send out to you.
Nice.
Right? And then another production member, Carrie, would like to know what your favorite video game is and what type of books you like to read.
Let's see. Favorite video game right now. I'm playing this game called Metaphor Re Fantizo. It's like an Atlas game that was produced by what Atlas like produces like the Persona series. And it's a lot of fun. It's very grindy. It feels very Pokemon-ish at times where you're like running through the meadows and like running, killing all these monsters over and over again. So that's pretty good. All-time favorite probably is Hades though. I love Greek mythology. And that game, you play as the son of Zagreus, and you have to like create like a creative build around your character. And the game starts off really hard, but then as you learn the mechanics, it becomes easier. And I kind of like that repetition of like starting easy, but then at the end, like as you get better and as you progress, feeling like a god. So there's that. As far as books I've read, I mean, I've read a lot. Like I read, I think some standouts. I think Verity by Colleen Hoover is the worst book of all time. I think it's like one of the most, I think it's like really terrible. But I read that at like in January and I still can't stop thinking about it. Like I had this whole goal of reading 52 books in a year. And that book really stands out just in how terrible it is and how like but how insanely paced it is and how fast it is. And I love it and I hate it. As far as like good books, I've been reading a lot of Brandon Sanderson, been what else? Been reading some biographies. Read one about Blizzard and read one about Becky Lynch, WWE superstar.
Mm.
So I have like a wide range of like of reading that I've been doing this last year, which has been good.
And of course, we can't say goodbye yet without one last question. What is one word that you would use to describe your game?
Goose.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Moody.
Definitely will take that.
Thank
Uh,
you.
Thank you again for joining us, David. Thank you, McKenna and Alex, for joining me this week. And thank you, loyal listeners, for tuning in, watching it. We have a brand new season coming your way. Episode 2 will air on Monday, and then Thursday, you'll get another episode. And then I'll be back again next Sunday. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.